Buenas tardes, McAllen! Buenas tardes, McAllen! How are we feeling down here? How are we feeling up top? I'm Greg Casar, and I'm proud to represent the heart of Texas and the United States Congress, and to welcome Bernie Sanders back to our state. You know, there's some people who have told me they don't understand why Senator Sanders would fly all the way from Vermont down to South Texas. There are some people, and it's those people who have this Texas-sized hole in their vision of the future of our country. They've just written us off. Tenemos corazón. There's those same people that say that the RGV has been bought off by billionaires, by Elon Musk, and that there's no getting it back. Short-sighted people who think that Texans are so divided that we just deserve this, that Latino communities and small-town communities in Texas deserve what we're getting. I don't think that's right. There's people who think that this is the best that we can do. But y'all, I refuse to believe that this is the best that we can do. A state where our president and our governor work for the billionaires instead of the working class. Is that the best that we can do? A state where it gets harder and harder to scrape by, while campaign contributors and their Republican puppets get them tax breaks and government contracts. Is that really the best we can do? A state where every damn Republican that we send to Congress, instead of helping us, is trying to kick us off of our health care in order to make their friends more money? Is that really the best that we can do? A state where you have to worry about your family being ripped away from you on the way to school or on the way to work when they've done nothing wrong, getting ripped away from you for no damn reason? Is that the best that we can do? Do we deserve that? Texas, it's time for a change, am I right? It's time for a change. Anyone who wants you to believe that this is the best that Texas can do does not know their history. Texans won Juneteenth. Texans won Roe v. Wade. Texas is the birthplace of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and Medicaid and Medicare. And I'm going to tell you right now, right here, that this place, McAllen, Texas, can be the birthplace of a new Democratic Party that puts working people first, kicks out the corrupt politicians regardless of party, and saves our country for everyday people. And here's how I know, because I've seen Texans do it before. I didn't start out my career in Congress or in the C-suite or in the courthouse. I started it as a labor organizer on construction sites. And y'all know what a Texas construction site looks like. There's black workers, brown workers, white workers, immigrant workers, documented, undocumented, native-born workers, people that cross the border, people where the border crossed us. And it's a couple hundred guys with at least a couple hundred opinions. But my job was to bring everybody together. And we could all agree, no matter who you were and where you come from, that the guys out there working overtime in the hot Texas sun deserve a raise, and the billionaires in the white, big, tall, glitzy towers could afford to pay for a raise. But sometimes we'd encounter a big-time real estate developer who just didn't want to pay. You guys know the type. The kind of guy that tried to say the rules didn't apply to him and tried to make himself feel bigger by saying stuff like, "You're fired." You know the type. You know, with a cheap spray tan and they like to put their name on everything. The type who got millions of dollars for his business from his dad and then likes to call himself a genius. You know, he's got tons of money and thinks that everybody was put on earth to make him richer, but he tries to cut your health care so he can put another zero next to his paycheck. You guys know the type. And every time those developers would try to play the oldest trick in the book. They would try to divide native workers from immigrant workers, pitting brown against white against black. They wanted people to fight each other so the rich could keep on getting richer. All this is to say, I've seen Donald Trump's playbook up close before. But I have good news. Every single time that working people united and stuck together and didn't fall for the tricks, we won. I've seen Texans win a raise, win health care, win retirement, win childcare, win their rights. We won because there's nothing more powerful in America than working people who refuse to be divided. You see, in Texas, our playbook is old too. When working people have stood together in this state, we've won our country back. Let me tell you, they're trying to divide us. They're trying to say that the division will get worse and worse and worse so they can take over this part of our country. But let me tell you right now, Elon Musk does not own the valley. Monica de la Cruz does not own our votes. Donald Trump does not own our country. He just doesn't. And guys, we can win this change. We need this change badly. We need this change today. Because being here in South Texas, talking to y'all, I know the devastation that Trump is wreaking every single day on our families.
We are the resistance!
Let's hear it. We know he's trying to intimidate us, but I don't want to sugarcoat what he's doing. ICE showing up at schools and churches. People here with legal status, a man deported to a foreign prison because they called his autism awareness tattoo a gang symbol. A 10-year-old U.S. citizen Texas girl with brain cancer deported where she was out of reach from her doctors. And I know so many mixed status families and undocumented people who have lived here for decades without doing anything wrong, who are terrified that they could be next. If you wake up every day afraid for yourself or afraid for a loved one, I want you to know, from me and from the senator, I see you, I hear you, and we're gonna fight like hell for you. And what's just so sick about it is these right-wing politicians, they eat food cooked by immigrants. They get their fancy cars cleaned by immigrants. They do their corrupt deals and buildings built and engineered and maintained and cleaned by immigrants. And then they have the gall to turn around and say that immigrants are the problem. Give me a break. Guess what? An asylum seeker did not raise your rent. A Wall Street hedge fund did. A dreamer did not cut your health care, but a big-time campaign donor and their Republican puppet politician sure as hell did. And it's gotta stop, and we've gotta stop them. We've gotta vote them out. We gotta vote them out. Keep it going. We're gonna vote them out. And I'm here to tell you how we're gonna do it. The people who supposedly represent you right here in McAllen, Texas, like Republican Congresswoman De La Cruz, like your Republican senators, they're doing a very dangerous, but also a very unpopular and very stupid thing. They're trying to pass a billionaire budget. And everybody needs to know and tell all of their neighbors about this budget. There's three things you need to know. First, it's the biggest tax cut for billionaires in American history. Second, it's the biggest cut to health care in American history. And third, it's the biggest cut to food assistance in American history. Right here in De La Cruz's district, she's trying to kick 66,000 people off of their health care and raise the cost of health care for everybody else by about $2,000. Does that sound like what people voted for? Does that sound popular? If you look up oligarchy in the dictionary, there should just be a big picture of this bill. Oligarchy is this. The billionaires get richer, everyone else here gets screwed. That's what they're doing. And that's where we all come in. Because Texas Democrats, independents, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, all of them, they hate this kind of a scam. That's why me and Bernie are here in McAllen. That's why we're here. Because Donald Trump built support here by lying to everyone to their face. He said he was going to be on the side of workers, and he's only on the side of his rich friends, and he's proving it. He's proving it. That's why, right after this, we're headed to Amarillo and Fort Worth, traditionally conservative areas. Because we are in a moment where it's not just left versus right. It's the billionaires versus everyone else. And we have to go talk to everyone else. Everyone that feels betrayed and lied to. And people ask me all the time, Greg, what should I do? Here's something you can do. You can do the exact same thing that Bernie and I are doing. Raise your hand if you know someone who voted for Donald Trump. It's basically everyone here. Keep it raised. Raise your hand if you voted for somebody that sat out this election. Keep your hands raised. Now, keep your hand raised. Now, only lower your hand if the person you're thinking about is a billionaire. Okay, so everybody, if you have your hand raised because the person you're thinking about isn't a billionaire, that means you have someone to go talk to. You know someone that's been screwed over. You have someone whose vote you can change. The person you're thinking of might get kicked off their health care, might have their hospital closed. They've had their costs go up. And if they're not a billionaire, they're not getting anything good out of this deal. Hint that we know that Trump said he was going to go after gangs. But he's coming after our families. He's coming after teachers and firefighters and moms and dads and kids, citizens and non-citizens alike. They didn't vote for that. Nobody voted for that. So McAllen, our job is to go and talk to our family, go and talk to our coworkers. Some of those folks may even be here in this room. Have a conversation. We may not be able to convince everyone, but person by person, we go and build a bigger team. You can be that organizer, that labor organizer. You can build a bigger team. When working people stand together, when we look past some of our differences, we can defeat the corrupt politicians and their billionaire donors. We need to do it because if we don't do it in Texas, we're screwed all over the country. It's up to each and every one of you. We're going to put it all on the line. Each and every one of us has to put it on the line. We can save people's health care, save countless lives, save our families from being ripped apart, save our democracy, save our country. It's in our hands, guys. It's in our hands. But there's one last thing I want to say to y'all before I call Senator Sanders up. If we do this, and we win back the valley. We transform our party. We kick out people like Monica de la Cruz and Greg Abbott. If we do that, the Democratic Party cannot leave places like McAllen behind ever again. I'm going to say it again. The Democratic Party cannot leave the valley behind ever again, cannot forget working people ever again, cannot cater to corporate interests instead of the people pulling 712s here in the valley, working harder than any damn politician. We can't leave them behind. First order of business, we got to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $17 an hour. Second order of business, we've got to tax billionaires to cut costs of childcare, housing, healthcare, and create great jobs and great schools right here in the RGV. And maybe we stop picking on gay Americans and women and immigrants and instead expand people's rights. The right to reproductive freedom, the right to a union, a pathway to citizenship for our families. Let's make people's lives better. There can be a better world after this one here in Texas. And to make it all stick, here's the big revolutionary idea. We get big money out of politics. That means banning stock trading by politicians, getting these super PACs out of our elections, and making it so that some lobbying group doesn't get to pick your politician. Voters get to unelect and elect your leaders. That's how it should be in the RGV. I know it feels hard right now. I know it can feel far off. I know that the road is long, and you've probably been promised stuff like this by tons of politicians. The road is long. It can feel sometimes like you just got to give up. And I feel that way sometimes. But then when I have that thought cross my mind, I think about a guy who has never given up. A guy who's been spreading this message day after day after day. No matter what people say, he keeps telling the truth. He's our champion for working people in this country. He's our warrior against the corruption and the cruelty. He's all of our Senator. McAllen, I'm proud to call up our Senator, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, McAllen. Well, thank you all very much for being out here tonight. This is quite the crowd. And let me thank our musicians. Let me thank Veronica Guerrero, a great public school teacher. Sereth Garcia, who talked about what Medicaid means to her life. Leonard Aguilar, who understands we've got to build the trade union movement in this country. Kendall Scudder, who understands that for many years the Democratic Party in Texas has been run in a terrible way. It's got to be turned around, and he intends to do that. And lastly, let me thank my friend Greg Casar from Austin. Texas, you have given us one of the outstanding members of the U.S. Congress, and we appreciate that very much. This is a tough time for America, and it's a tough time for McAllen. And I'm not going to deny that for a second. And I hope tonight that we're going to have a serious discussion about what's going on in our country and what's going on right here. There's a lot of bad news, clearly, in the fact that we have, as a nation today, more serious crises than we have ever had in the modern history of America. And if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you're not alone. That's a feeling that is being experienced all over America. That's the bad news, but I'll tell you the good news, and that is in our Fighting Oligarchy tour that Greg has been a part of, and we've gone to, this is our 13th state, more than 250,000 people have come out. And just last Saturday, on the No Kings Day, millions and millions of Americans in every state of this country came out and loudly and clearly, they said no to oligarchy, no to authoritarianism and picking people up off of the streets. No to kleptocracy and a president who's going to make billions of dollars off of his presidency. And no to legislation which will provide, if passed, hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 1% and make devastating cuts to the needs of working families. So that's what's going on in the country. And let me be more specific. You are now living in an oligarchic form of society. Some of you may have noticed when Trump was inaugurated, seems like 20 years ago, but it was just a few months ago, standing right behind him were the three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg. You know those guys. And then seated right behind them were another 13 billionaires who Trump had nominated to head various major government agencies. So I don't have to tell you or the American people that today we have a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. I don't have to tell you because Mr. Trump did already. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. Now, what I'm going to tell you doesn't get on TV too much and certainly not discussed in the halls or the floors of Congress. You got one man, our friend Mr. Musk, who owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of households in America. Do you hear that? One person owning more wealth than over half the households in America. You got in America today, top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93% of Americans. You got CEOs in America now making 350 times what their average employees make. So bottom line, you got the people on top never in the history of this country have done better than they're doing it today. And it's not just income and wealth inequality. You got more concentration of ownership in America, in every sector of our society, whether it's agriculture or transportation or financial services. You got a few giant multinational corporations who control what is produced and, more importantly, the high prices for the products that you pay. Bottom line is that in the wealthiest country in America, in the history of the world, we have two Americas. One America, people on top, doing phenomenally well. But there is another America that I suspect the people in McAllen are very familiar with. And that is that while the 1% is doing extraordinarily well, there are millions and millions of families in Vermont and here in Texas who are struggling to pay the rent, struggling to pay for health care, struggling to put food on the table, to pay for child care and other basic necessities of life. And again, I hope you hear this because you're not going to see it on TV very often. Today in America, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? Yeah, I'm afraid many of you do. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is you got people, mom, dad, working hard, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week, just trying desperately to bring in enough money to keep the family going. And people are worried. What happens if the rent goes up? What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if mother gets sick? And suddenly the whole thing could unravel because people have literally no money in the bank. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And I'll tell you something else about paycheck. I want to ask you, and later on I'm going to ask you, I want you to talk about what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. And here's something else that we don't talk about very much in America. As a nation, despite the huge amount of money we spend on health care, we live on average about 4 years shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. Got it? That's bad. You know what's even worse? In America today, if you are working class, on average, you will live 7 years shorter life than the 1%. All right, somebody help me out on this one. Why is that? Why do working class people live shorter lives than people who have a lot of money? All right, somebody raise their hand here. Yes, sir. Overwork, underpaid. And what does that contribute to? All right. The key word here is stress. Yes, ma'am, do you want to jump in? Food desert, not having access to decent food. What else you got? Yes, ma'am. Poor access to health care. Well, you guys hit the nail right on the head. All right. Inadequate wages. No vacations. People are overworked. Not able to retire. All right, you add all of that stuff up, and what doctors will tell you, nobody debates this, is that when people every day are worried about how they survive, what the stress does is really have a negative impact on their bodies, on their cardiovascular system, and on their minds, mental stress. That is the simple reality. And you add all of that stuff up, that is why working class people die 7 years earlier than the wealthy. Well, that's another issue we'll get to in a minute. And people in this country today are very angry. They're angry for a lot of reasons, and sometimes they get angry at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. And I want to get into that in a moment with your help. But what I want to say right now, when you talk about why people are angry, what is not widely known, and I want you to hear this one carefully, as all of you can imagine, over the last 50 years, there has been an explosion in technology and an increase in worker productivity, right? It means that every worker here is producing a lot more than somebody in that position did 50 years ago. And yet, despite that huge increase in worker productivity, the truth of the matter is that inflation accounted for wages, weekly wages, are lower today than they were 52 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you got this huge increase in productivity. Where is all of that increased wealth going? And the answer is that over the last 50 years, there has been a $75 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. And in the midst of all of that, stagnant wages, people not being able to keep up with inflation, cost of child care exploding, groceries exploding, that in the midst of all of that, right now, literally today, I'll be back in Washington on Monday. We'll be dealing with this. Trump has brought forward with the Republican leadership a reconciliation bill, or what he calls his big, beautiful bill. And at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this bill would provide $650 billion in tax breaks to the top 1%. It would provide more than $400 billion to large corporations who will use those tax breaks to bring in robotics and artificial intelligence, which will throw workers in this country out on the street. And the Republicans are paying for these huge tax breaks in an incredibly insidious and immoral way. Everybody here knows that our health care system today is broken, right? We got 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. What these guys want to do is cut Medicaid by some $700 billion and throw 16 million more Americans off of the health care they have. And it's not just individuals who would be impacted. Nursing homes, who are already struggling, receive 2/3 of their funding from Medicaid, and these nursing homes would either have to shut down or lower their quality of care. It would be, these cuts to Medicaid would be devastating for community health centers, and I fought very hard over the years to build community health centers all over America, including Texas, so people, regardless of income, could walk in and get the health care they need. This bill cuts in Medicaid, devastating not only community health centers, but the hospitals, to the entire healthcare system. And here's something that is really unbelievable and shocking. There was a study done recently by the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania. And they estimated that when you throw 16 million people off of the health care that they have, people who are working class, people who are lower income, there will be an additional 50,000 unnecessary deaths every single year. But it's not just our healthcare system that would be devastated by this legislation. And this, again, is almost, you wonder the mentality, what world these guys are living in. All of us know that there are kids in Texas and in Vermont who go hungry. They don't get enough food, right? There are senior citizens who are dependent on Meals on Wheels program, congregate meal program, so they get at least one decent, nutritious meal a day. This legislation would cut $290 billion from nutrition. It is shameful, it is immoral, it is outrageous. And I don't have to tell anybody here that kids all over this country struggling, trying to figure out how they can afford to go to college or get the training they need to get a good job. This bill would slash education funding by $350 billion a year. Brothers and sisters, what we are dealing with is not only a massive attack on working families in order to benefit the very, very rich. And when I talk about the power of the rich, it's not only economic. I want you also to understand what a lot of people don't perceive. We have today a corrupt campaign finance system. All right? If you can believe it, I mean, it's almost hard to believe that this takes place in our country. Elon Musk himself spent $270 million to elect Donald Trump. And the reward that he got for electing Trump was to become the most powerful person in government, running all over, cutting the Social Security Administration, proposing to cut, if you can believe this, 83,000 jobs from the Veterans Administration. The American people know that when we have men and women who put their lives on the line to defend our country, you keep the promises we made to them. You don't cut back on the health care and the benefits that they receive. But what Trump is doing is not just waging an attack against the working class of this country. He is moving America very rapidly and dangerously into an authoritarian form of society. All right? We are supposed to have under our Constitution a separation of powers. You got an executive branch, you got a legislative branch, you have a judiciary, and this power-hungry man wants it all. He is usurping and taking away powers in the Congress. He is threatening the judiciary if a judge rules against him, threatening to impeach that judge. He is going after and suing media because some media has the courage to point out what he is doing. Now, this is a guy who every day is making vicious attacks against people he doesn't like. But when people attack him, he is very sensitive. His feelings get hurt. Okay? Very sensitive man. So he has sued ABC. He has sued Meta. He has sued the Des Moines Register because he didn't like a poll that they did. And right now, he is waging a major lawsuit against 60 Minutes and CBS because he didn't like an interview they did with Kamala Harris. He is going after universities in America because he doesn't like the courses they teach. He is going after law firms because they represented clients he didn't like. And now, right now, in McAllen and other parts of this country, we're seeing what authoritarianism is about in its ugliest way. We're seeing people being stopped on the street, being picked up at their workplace, thrown into vans and taken God knows where without due process. Grabbing people, throwing them into a van is what takes place in dictatorships. Maybe it takes place in Russia or North Korea, but it's not supposed to happen in America, and we are going to fight back on that. A major point that I want to make is that the overwhelming majority of the American people do not support Trumpism. They do not believe that we should have a government run by billionaires. Some of you may recall a speech Abraham Lincoln gave on the Gettysburg battlefield in 1863. And you know what he said? He looked out on this battlefield where a terrible battle had taken place in the fight against slavery. And he looked out there and he said, what we owe these men, and thousands died on that day. Many were wounded and died later. He said, we owe them a vision which says that America will have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what we believe. Now, this country has gone through difficult times in the past. Fight over slavery, the abolitionists in the 1840s, 1850s, that struggle. We've gone through the terrible depression in the 1920s, where 1930s, where unemployment was like 25%. Got into World War II. We were totally unprepared to fight two wars, one in Europe and one in Asia. We have struggled for decades to fight for women's rights, to fight for civil rights, to end discrimination against the gay community, to create a nation in which all people could live together with justice. And we have had some good successes over the years. But where we have not succeeded is in the economic struggle. I want all of you never to forget not only that you are living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but with so much new technology out there. The truth of the matter is that all people in America should have a decent standard of living. We live right now with a corrupt campaign finance system, and the implications of that system is that Congress, day after day, does things that the American people doesn't want it to do and doesn't do what we want it to do. And the reason for that is you have these billionaires out there. You got Musk saying to the Republicans, if you vote against my tax breaks for billionaires, we're going to primary you, we're going to throw you out of office. And on the Democratic Party, you got big fundraisers who say, if you stand up and vote for ending funding for Netanyahu's horrible war in Gaza, we are going to primary you. And right now, you're seeing cowardly members of Congress who are refusing to stand firm and say, no, we are not going to go to another war in Iran. We got 800,000 Americans sleeping out on the street. People can't afford food. They can't afford health care. We do not have to spend billions more fighting a war in Iran. But what that means is the most important political issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it is enormously important. We have got to end this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It is not a democracy when billionaires buy elections. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, which is what Trump wants, our demand is that when the rich have never had it so good, they're going to start paying their fair share of taxes. There are millions of workers in this country who are trying to make it on 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour. And I don't care where you live, you can't make it on those starvation wages. We're going to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour. And what workers increasingly understand is they're not going to be able to negotiate for decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions without a trade union. And that's why we've got to make it easier for workers to join unions. There are a number of Republicans who want to cut, if you can believe it, cut Social Security. Do you know what? This is, again, an unbelievable fact. Some 22% of seniors today in America are living on $15,000 a year or less. Can anybody explain to me how anybody in America, let alone a senior, can make it on $15,000 a year? Nobody can. Nobody can. So we're not going to cut Social Security. Our demand must be to expand Social Security benefits by lifting the cap on taxable income. And many years ago, well, not so many years ago, workers had what was called defined benefit pension plans. You know what that is? What that means is you go to, I know the younger people don't even know what this is about, but it means that workers in large corporations, part of, their wage benefits and everything else was a guaranteed that when you retired, you left the company, you would get a pension. You knew exactly what it was. It was a defined benefit pension plan. And that is exactly what we have got to do right now. We've got to strengthen Social Security, but we have to make sure that every worker in America has the kind of pension that he or she deserves. The United States of America today is the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people. Do you know that? One country. Love you to visit us, I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Somehow, in Canada and in countries all over the world, they have determined that health care is a human right, not a privilege. The function of today's broken and cruel healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all. It is to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. And our job, and this is not a radical idea, it's not just Canada, it's all over Europe, it's in countries in Latin America. Our job is to make sure that we have a healthcare system that provides quality care to every man, woman, and child as a human right. Now, there's another issue coming down the pike which is going to be a huge issue, and that is the explosion of robotics and artificial intelligence. The reality is that most of the jobs that you guys have that exist in America are not going to be there in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be radically changed. And right now we're beginning to see the kinds of layoffs that I fear will happen. Now, technology and artificial intelligence and robotics are not bad unto themselves. If you're doing dangerous work or dirty work, and a machine comes in and can do that work for you, there's nothing wrong with that. The issue that we have got to resolve is who benefits from this new technology. If worker productivity goes up because of this technology, it must be workers who benefit, not just the owners of the corporations. And this is a huge issue that we're working on right now. Well, let me just wind down my remarks, and then I want to take some questions or comments and just say this. These are tough times for our country. And we are taking on, when I call them oligarchs, these are people who have more wealth than you could imagine. I mean, they're not billionaires, they're multi-billionaires. They have tens of billions of dollars. And I think what we have to understand, we are facing in this country, as all of you know, serious problem in Vermont, I'm sure it's here as well, addiction, drug addiction problems, a problem right here, overdoses and all that. You have people who are addicted to drugs, we have people addicted to alcohol, etc., etc. What these people are addicted to on top, and I mean this seriously, they are addicted to it. They are addicted to greed. They want more and more. Everybody wants to live comfortably. Everybody wants to make money. But for these people, there is no end in sight. They're prepared to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, in order to get even more wealth and more power. And the only way we stop them, what they got is incredible power, unlimited resources, they own the media, etc., etc. But we have one thing that they don't have. We have the people. But that doesn't mean anything if we are not organized. What Trumpism is about, by the way, and this is true of demagogues historically and all over the world right now. You know how they flourish? Do you think Trump and his friends are going to go around and say, vote for us so we can give massive tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? That ain't what they're talking about. All right, what they do is come up with quote-unquote enemies. Often people who have very little political power who are minorities. This goes on all over the world. It's always gone historically. 40, 50 years ago, there were candidates running for office who says, oh, tell you, white folks, those black people are going to take your jobs. Folks, those gay people are taking over your school system. Jews are doing this. Latinos are doing that. They always pick on a minority group. Our job is to break through that, to bring our people together. And when we stand together, we can win. But that is what demagoguery is. Instead of saying, well, you know what, maybe the problem with America is the fact that you have billionaires with uncontrollable greed who are prepared to destroy working people to become even richer. That's not what these guys are going to tell you. They're going to say, oh, the problem with America is all these undocumented people, and we got to get rid of them, blah, 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 blah. All right? And we've got to bring our people to understand, among other things, that during COVID, you know who was picking the food and processing the meat and are working in nursing homes? It was undocumented people. And the answer is not to have ICE agents picking people up off the streets. The answer is comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. So these are tough times. They're tough times in so many ways. But I believe from the bottom of my heart that if we stand together, if we do not let Trump and his friends divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation, if we stand together, we can not only defeat Trumpism, we can in fact create the kind of nation that the working families of this country deserve. All right, I want to ask you a question right now, and I'd like somebody to raise their hand, maybe come up here. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about what's going on in McAllen. Who wants to come on up here and say a few words on that, or raise their hands at least? Got a mic? All right. Who wants to talk about that? Danny? Okay, right here? All right, we got a mic for you. 1 second. Okay. Hold the mic in your hand.
Okay.
Right, tell me what's happening. Hold it. He can hold it. Let him hold it.
Can I hold?
He can hold
it. Is that okay? Well, Senator Sanders, first of all, thank you so much for coming down to the border. But to be real, we're in the state of crisis. I have personal friends, family members. There's a lot of us here, but there are thousands of our friends and family members that wouldn't even drive here because they're afraid to drive in the streets at night. I know people working, domestic workers, people that work in restaurants, they're not showing up to work. That have, kids in our public schools, they're not sure if they're gonna drive them to school this fall. So I don't know if I have a question, but I just wanted to really bring forward the urgency, yes, how scared people really are right now. We didn't really feel it into this administration. I know there's been a lot of talk about fear, but it's really never been this urgent like this time around. And I'm wondering what we could do with senators like you, like Greg Kazar. What can we do to protect our people right now? I know there's a lot of Know Your Rights movement going on, but what can we do with leaders that have the power that you do to start to better protect our people in this moment of crisis?
Well, I think, here's what I don't have the magic answer. This is what I think. First thought, the American people are increasingly disturbed by what they are seeing on their TV screens. All right, it's one thing to say, I am going to get rid of a drug dealer or a violent criminal who came to this country illegally. And people say, yeah, that's fine, get rid of that person. It's another thing to go after somebody who's been working on a job, paying taxes, working hard for 10 years, and say, we're going to throw that person out. And it's an interesting thing. Some of you may have noticed that recently. You have large employers in agriculture and in meat processing. They're saying to Trump, do you know what you're doing? You want to throw all of these people out? The price of food in America is going to double. That's what the employers are saying, because they know who is doing the work. So I think the answer, and again, I am in a minority on this, but the answer has got to be immediately to stop this business of people being arrested without due process, thrown into detention centers. That is not, I believe, what most Americans want. And the polling is now becoming clearer, by the way. Again, what they will use, the rhetoric they will use is, we're throwing out these violent criminals. And people say, good, do it. But when you go after people who have lived in this country for a long time, worked hard, paid taxes, live by the rules. That is not working so well for Trump. So we gotta figure out a way to stop ICE from what they are doing as soon as possible. All right, other comments on this? People, I want to say on this is I know, as Danny mentioned, this is very much on people's minds. Am I correct? All right. Yes, I see a young man right here.
So I wanted to say thank you for coming.
Oh, excuse me. Just give it to him. He can hold it. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming down, because many politicians, they can just get elected and stay over there in office. But I appreciate that you guys are from far away and nonetheless coming down. What my concern is that there's a lot of misinformation within the media. That the Republicans, some of them who might want to stand up against Trump, are afraid of it because he threatens them by saying that he's going to primary them.
Yes.
The law firms, as you mentioned, law firms that might be able to sue him are being silenced. And so it's becoming an autocracy where Trump has all power. And my fear is that what is it that we can do to stop that as the people of the country? And what is it that the government officials like yourself, that instead of it being 3 separate branches, it's becoming just himself controlling the other branches? What is it that maybe you guys can do to hold him accountable still?
Well,
to
this
this
is,
day?
I mean, this is why I am here. And thank you very much. You know, I believe in democracy. I really do, in my heart of hearts. You disagree with me? That's fine. That's what America is supposed to be about. Make your point. You want to run against me? Run against me. But what you're going to have to move to Vermont to do that, but it's all right. But what is happening now, and this young man made the point, if you are a Republican member of Congress in Texas or anyplace else, and in your heart of hearts, you understand how devastating these cuts to Medicaid would be, right? And you think it's really dumb to give tax breaks to people who don't need it. And you got up and you stood that. The next day, Elon Musk or somebody else would say, you are finished politically, we're going to primary you. And that is where we are as a nation right now. Now, the reason I am here, and where we're going after we're here, we're going to Louisiana. I'm going to be right in the district of the Speaker of the House who helped write this bill. And believe it or not, that guy it's not like he represents, you know, Speaker Johnson doesn't represent some wealthy community. He represents a low-income working class community. And the reason I'm going, why am I in Texas? Why am I going to Louisiana? Why am I going to Oklahoma? To tell people there to stand up and put pressure on their elected officials. So they're going to have to make a decision. Is it just their campaign contributions, or are they going to have to listen to people who understand what's going on and are going to throw them out of office if they do the wrong thing? So that's kind of what the reason you're asking me what I'm doing. That's why I'm here, is to mobilize people in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. These are conservative states. But my strong guess, you go out in Texas, any place else, and you say to people, do you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? 80–90% of the people will say no. But they don't know what's going on, and our job is to mobilize those people, and that's what we're doing right now. All right, other questions on let's stay on immigration for a moment if we can. Anyone else want to say a word? I see a woman straight in front of me. Yes, thank you. Let's get a mic. We'll get your mic. Just let her have it.
Hello. Senator Sanders, thank you for coming to South Texas. My name is Gabby Zabaleta, and I would like to ask the Democratic Party to take the narrative of immigration and to stand for us. Because we are workers, we're good people, and if they do not take the narrative and start writing immigration reform, the Republicans are going to continue to call us names and berate us, and that's not fair. So please tell the Democratic Party to stand up and also take some of the risk along with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I am, as it happens, I am an independent, the longest serving independent in congressional history. But I caucus with the Democrats, and I'm part of the Democratic leadership. I will convey your feelings to the leadership. But I'll tell you, there is, let me just say a word on this one. And maybe Kendall, the new chair of the Democratic Party here, has spoken about it. It is no great secret that 40, 50 years ago, if you went out on the street in Texas or Vermont and you said to people, which political party represents the working class of America, no matter what their views are, so, well, it's the Democratic Party. Who represents the wealthy and the powerful? Oh, it's the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party, many decades ago, had the brilliant idea that they would start accepting corporate money. And over the years, while they were strong on issues like women's rights and civil rights and gay rights and the environment, they in many ways turned their backs on working families. And all over this country, people are looking at the Democrats and they say, we don't believe a word you say anymore. You talk and you talk, but you don't deliver. And then they vote, maybe they'll throw the dice and say, I'm going to vote for a Trump. What I am trying to do is two things. We are trying to bring about fundamental reform of the Democratic Party. And right now, the Democratic Party, it is no great secret, is a top-down party controlled by billionaires and controlled by these consultants who live in another world. They don't know a clue what's going on. And our job is to force open. You know, the Democratic Party is not supposed to be a private club. And we got to break open that door and come marching in as working people, as young people, people of color, and say, you know what, this party belongs to us, not just billionaires. All right, look, I want to again thank everybody for coming out, and I appreciate Danny's point that we probably would have had twice as many people here tonight if people weren't afraid. And I hate the idea of people in this country being afraid to express their views in Congress, being afraid to walk the streets of McAllen. That is not what this country is about. But we have gone, let me just conclude by saying this. Again, these are tough times. These are the most difficult times in my lifetime, and I'm older than most of you. All right? So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These are tough times. But despair is not an option. That is what they want us to do. All right? If we stand together, look, you know, the American people are decent people. They care about each other. The vast majority are not greedy people who want it all. Go around Texas. People think that health care is a human right. People think the minimum wage should be raised. People think we get billionaire money out of campaigns. That's what most people think. Our job is to stand together right now. It's to take over the Democratic Party. It's to take on the greed of the billionaire class. It's to create a country of compassion and, dare I say, of love. Rather than one of greed. And I hate you because you came from a different country or you're a different religion. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. We're going to turn it around. Thank you all very much.